Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. This is the Vocal Podcast and thank you for tuning in. Today I've kind of taken a different approach on my podcast. I have a guest today, so I'm really excited for this one and I hope you guys enjoy. So today in this episode I'm going to be talking to my friend Abdullah, who is also a colleague of mine. He studies at Swansea University with me and does chemistry, who also grew up in Iraq and moved here as a refugee in what year was it? 2014, and now he's going to tell us a bit about his experience with authenticity and what that means to him. So Abdullah, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us where you're from.
I am from Iraq. I was born in Baghdad and raised there. I lived there most of my life. I moved a little bit throughout my life. In 2006 I moved to Syria to live there for a while, and things were very hectic in Iraq. I lived there for 3 years when I was in primary school, which was a very interesting experience, I'd say. Very strange for the for how old I was at the time. And then after that, in 2009, I went back and lived in Iraq and continued my secondary school life. And just before the end of secondary school, I moved to the UK, here to Swansea in 2014, and I started doing my A-levels here. Actually I did move to the UK a year before 2014. 2013 I stayed here for a month, and actually a couple of months, and I was enrolled to do my GCSEs in the same school that I did my A-levels at a year later. But I hated it so much.
You hated it? Why?
I literally left and went back to Iraq. Mainly because of the people there. Because when I got there a month late, so I started a month late. So they put me in a lot of the classes. They put me in were the lowest sets because they thought they didn't know if I was any good or anything. So they put me in the sets where all the weirdos who are just not very nice, and it was weird. A lot of the classes I went to, there was a few Iraqi boys.
So would you say that was your first kind of brush with challenging your authenticity and confronting yourself?
Well, in a way I would say it was heavily related to that, because in a way, because I was in that group of people, they had a certain expectation of what I was like, because they were all kind of had similar ideas and similar ways of thinking about the world around them and how they perceived other people in the school that we went to, especially British people. They had at least one of them, they had a certain weird animosity towards the people around him, specifically British people. Just he used to live in Sweden, but he just had this really weird negative toxic energy that kind of permeated around him and dominated a lot of conversations or interactions, which made it very unpleasant. Really.
Do you think it was him trying to fit in, or do you think he generally at that age? Because how old were you?
I was, in 2013, I was 16.
So do you think he generally had those opinions himself, or do you think it was his way of coping?
I think, I'm not sure. I think he'd at that time, he'd been living there for at least a year or so. But the thing is, before that, he had come from Sweden. He used to live in Sweden for a lot of his life. So I think what it is that he didn't really, I think he found it very different in a not so favourable way. I think he liked the way it was in Sweden a lot more. And honestly, I think, for us Iraqi people, Swansea is a very strange place to be, and just because it's so cold and rainy, it just messes with our brains, honestly.
Can you think of any example where you felt like you had to confront being authentic and you had to kind of almost tell these guys that, listen, I'm this Iraqi boy, you're that kind of Iraqi boy?
I think I did. It was kind of hard to kind of push that idea through to them because they just were so assertive with their way of thinking. They just not weren't very receptive to different ideas or anything. And I think part of it is that if you're in that environment where everyone you know is kind of like that, it kind of normalizes that behavior and it makes it seem like it's right or it's normal. I did kind of try and push towards more to show how I really am, and just because one of the people that they were friends with was kind of also more mild and not as negative and aggressive with his way of thinking towards people. So I found kind of a solace of sorts with that one person, just because I knew I wasn't alone at least in that. But I think definitely being in that environment made me feel more alone because I couldn't be my true self.
So what has been the greatest challenge of dealing with your authenticity and being your true self? What would you say that was?
Well, I would say the most consistent challenge I have with being my true self, my authentic self, would be sort of with trying to be my true self with my family and my family members, my parents, because I come from a religious background, or from a religious family. It's very hard for me to be who I am truly with them, because I don't really live up to the standards and expectations of what I should be, and a lot of the things that I would enjoy in my life, that I would like to pursue or would like to have the freedom to do in my life, might go against their ideas and ideals of what should be acceptable for someone because of their religious beliefs. So I think that has been really challenging for a long time for me, because it seemed like for me there's always like this sort of divide whenever I'm with my family, because I can't truly always talk about my life exactly in true detail. There are always things that I've had to basically omit or not pretend they're not there, basically, which has always been hard, because it makes me feel like it's annoying, because it feels like I'm lying in a way. It just feels like I'm constantly lying, and it also doesn't feel nice, because I like my family. I don't dislike them at all. They're all very nice. I love them and they love me too. So I think that's what makes it harder as well, is that there's no real animosity between us, but there's this one underlying like challenge of me basically being unable to really be who I am to my full extent.
So do you feel like that there are more than two truths to who you are? So there's a you when you're with your family, there's a you when you're with your friends, and then there's an academic you. Do you feel like that is in itself is a truth?
I would say myself, my true self, when I'm like with my friends or my academic life, I think those are more closely related than when I'm with my family. Although I can't really say that I'm not myself when I'm with my family, because I am. I don't act differently. I still act the same. I joke around the same way. I talk about pretty much the same things, more or less. It's just the taboo things that I would not be able to discuss in the same way or involve myself in front of them, at least. Like I can't talk about maybe relationships I would have with I can't talk about if I was intoxicated in a way. If I like, even if it's not about being drunk or something, but if you want to talk about something that's deeper than that, related to like maybe alcohol use or something like that, like even just talking about it makes you kind of seem like, in a way, like shocking or suspicious or stuff like that. So it's just kind of that filter that's there that prevents me from being exactly what I am. But like, as I think, me as a person, I don't think that I think I'm quite similar. Like, my true self is quite related in all those situations. It's just in a specific environment, I'd have to basically tone it down a lot more. Yeah.
Have you ever had a point in your life where you've had to battle with yourself to find out who you really are and who your true self is? Has there ever been a point where you've been unsure as to who you are?
I feel like I'm trying to find my true self, or trying to find what works for me all the time, because part of being my true self is having purpose, like I think, like you addressed in your last episode, having that purpose is kind of part of being yourself, because even if that purpose is not like organically just appears in you, it's something that we all kind of seek and are looking for pretty much on a daily basis. So even if it's not necessarily authentic to begin with, it's sort of just, you kind of make your own authenticity in a way. It's like a process. It's just always in my head
constantly.
I don't feel like it's something that's
that you can just
I think it just happens subconsciously.
I think that's something, because I agree with that point as well, because in my 20s, I think leaving home, as I said in my first podcast, but come to the realization that you have to kind of decide who you are and what you want to do. You know, it kind of gives you this stress, like, oh my god, who am I? Oh my god, I need to be making money. Oh my god, I need to like be here and be there.
From my family, I do have a lot of pressure. More so than like my sisters would have. On like achieving a certain standard or certain goals, or I have to be like working at this age and like be making this much money, or be in a respectable, quote unquote, a job or like sector or something. So it's I think that also kind of affects how I feel about my authenticity, because even if because it does affect how you perceive things. Like, I might think something is good for me or something is more true to myself, but if it gets in the way of me, say, getting like a good degree, or getting in the way of me like reaching that standard that my parents have set for me or expect from me, it makes me feel bad in a way, and it like discourages me a little bit from
pursuing
that,
and looking for who you are,
thinking about it. And I think that definitely is affected.
Have you felt that growing older has made you become less authentic? Because a lot of people normally have this kind of idea that as the pressures of society kind of come in on you, we're more involved with social media as we get older. We might be in a workplace environment, uni environment, trying to fit in kind of thing. Do you think that's been a struggle with yourself?
I'd say it's definitely affected how I guess what my authentic self is. I think your environment and your surroundings heavily affect it anyway as you grow up, because as you were mentioning, when with finding purpose and stuff, when you're in our age and you're moving out and you're getting into all these new environments, you get overwhelmed, and there's these little things that you don't necessarily think about or do as much before you move out that you have to do now. It wouldn't necessarily coincide with your authentic self, but like having to like clean the dishes every day, or
it doesn't feel like that's part of your authentic self at all. It feels very pedantic.
It feels very like forced, or just it's very strange. It's especially going from just never having to think about that stuff, because you don't think of it as a thing that you have to do every single day when you're not living on your own. But when you're living on your own, it's something that's on your mind pretty much all the time. And not all the time, but like it's
almost a failure if you don't do these kind of things, kind of thing. Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen, it piles up with everything else, and I think for me at least, it contributes to me feeling like a lot worse about myself. Like whenever I've failed to do all these, like I'd say, tasks or chores that are kind of part of your daily routine as an adult. It just makes me feel down, lazy, and it just doesn't feel nice. So whenever I get in a routine with them, it makes me feel a lot better. But I'm not like, I don't know if that means that it is part of my authentic self now as an adult, maybe because now I feel good when I clean the dishes.
Get that positive.
I feel good when I tidy up my room and put my clothes away neatly and stuff. When I was younger, I could not have cared less about that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I think if you asked me to do that sort of stuff at the time, I would just be very begrudgingly do it and annoyed, and the kind of thing we do. But now I think, I guess in a way your authentic self kind of adapts as you grow older, because I guess a lot of things change when you grow older. The way you think about things changes, the way you perceive things, the way the way you are compassionate toward things. Like you start being, a lot more understanding, I think, in my opinion, because you start understanding more for people's perspectives. You start meeting different people. You start just gaining perspective.
Look forward for you guys joining me next time, where I've gotten a few of my friends together and we talk about what it's like dating as a black person in a majority white area. And thank you guys again for tuning in. I appreciate your support so much. Every week you guys give me some sort of feedback, and it literally makes my podcast get a little bit better each time. So thank you guys so much for that, and love. Have a good evening.